Hello, and welcome to Cheers to Fears, where we take horror films and turn them into drinking games. We're your two hosts. I'm Tucker.
And I'm Alex. Today we will be making a drinking game for Scream 4, directed by Wes Craven as his last ever film that his legacy left behind. Also coming back to write this movie is Kevin Williamson, who wrote Screams 1 and 2.
In Scream 4, Sydney comes back to Woodsboro for the grand opening of her book tour as she stays with her aunt and her little cousin Jill. Once again, surprise, surprise, there's another Ghostface killer and they want to kill Sydney. At the forefront of the victims this time around is Jill, and Sydney tries to do everything that she can to protect her little cousin.
As always, we will be getting into spoilers throughout the video, and we recommend that you watch the movie in its entirety before watching the rest of our video. This movie goes hand in hand with our drinking rules, so we recommend that you use our drinking rules posted on screen if you have not watched the movie yet, or if you just need a quick refresher on what happens in the film. Now let's get on to the rest of the video.
As always, our first rule is death, and this time around it gave us 16 sips.
And just a reminder that some of these are presumed deaths. So for example, Sydney is part of the death tally, even though she didn't actually die, but we're going at it at a viewpoint that we haven't seen the movie yet.
Yeah.
So we have to include it just keeping that in kind of the back of our heads here, and especially in the back of the heads of new time viewers as well.
Yeah, and it's also mentioned online everywhere that Kirby survived, but nothing is confirmed or denied, so that's just another one that we presume did when we're watching it too.
Yeah. On to the next rule, which is screams, cries, or yells. If you hear any of those, you take a sip. For the total here, we got 22 sips.
Yeah, and there's not much else to say on that rule, so I'll move on to rule number 3, which is whenever something meta happens, whenever you see a horror trope, or when the movie's being self-aware. This time around it gave us 19 sips, and again, there's not too much to say this time around. It wasn't as much as previous films were in some cases, but this time they kind of did replace Randy in a way with Robbie and Charlie. They were kind of there as the, horror experts or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm very thankful that we got some, at least, spiritual successor to Randy in these films.
Yeah, exactly, I am too.
Now moving on to rule number 4, which is whenever there's a phone call, you take a sip. The total for this rule came to 16 sips.
Yeah, every Scream movie has phone calls. There's not much else to say. It's no surprise. So moving on to rule number 5, again, is whenever there's a Ghostface mask, you take a drink. This one resulted in an astounding 41 sips.
Yes. This is a kind of point where we realize that the Ghostface mask rule is probably a bad idea, because it's kind of turning into the same thing that we did with our Halloween franchise with pumpkins.
Yeah.
In saying that, I feel like there was a few bad scenes where there was just Ghostface masked all around the, I think it was a bookstore where Sydney was setting up at, or maybe it's just around Woodsboro. But either way, there was a lot throughout the film, especially when they had their little stab-a-thon, I think it was called.
Yeah.
There was a lot there as well, so there was a lot of Ghostface masks in the movie.
Yeah, and we always have to have one of these rules, especially for the slasher movies. It seems like there's always one rule that's like this.
There's always one rule that sets it over the edge.
Yeah, and this is that rule.
Now on to our next rule. Whenever there's a horror movie character reference or a horror movie reference, you take a sip.
We're gonna go scary. Saw 4.
Ugh, I saw that in theaters. It sucks. It's not scary, it's gross. I hate all that torture porn shit.
How do you really feel? Well, I like Jigsaw. I think he kills people very creatively.
This came to 24 sips, and just a reminder, this is coming back after the third movie, as the third movie had basically none of these.
Yeah, and I was glad to see this returning in this movie, because it was something that I missed in the third installment. So I'm glad this made a return.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I'm really happy to have Charlie and Robbie back, just because they do provide a lot of these references.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, moving on to rule number 7, it's whenever stab is referenced. And this resulted in 23 sips, and pretty much it's no surprise that this is a returning rule, because it's a running theme throughout the franchise after the second one.
Yeah.
Well, there's Stabathon.
Stabathon?
It's a movie marathon. All 7 stabs back to back. We do it every year.
And it's tonight? There's a killer out there patterning his murders after the original movie.
I know, it's pretty wild.
And pretty much there's a fan club for the stab movies, because they even have the Stabathon, like you mentioned, and it revolves around that plot quite a bit, so it does happen quite a bit.
Yeah, I feel like it's starting to turn to more of a Friday the 13th in this universe, as opposed to a Scream movie in the universe. It's really weird.
Yeah.
It's starting to turn into a typical slasher franchise, as opposed to what Scream's supposed to be, which is an off, kind of meta franchise. Now let's move on to the next rule, which is whenever somebody talks about Sydney's book, and this came to a total of 7 sips.
The book is Out of Darkness, and its author, Sidney Prescott, is here with us today.
Have the 7 Stab movies, all based on Gail Weathers' books about you, made it even harder to go on? I don't blame Gail, that's in the past.
And this is kind of an interesting concept to deal with because in the second one, Gail was writing the book for fame and fortune. And then now it kind of seems that Sydney is writing the book, albeit she's not necessarily doing it for fame and fortune because we even see she gets the chance to have a bunch of other books that are approved by the publisher or whatever. And she kind of turns that down and fires her publicist or whatever.
I won't be needing you anymore.
Sydney, you're fired. 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 Fine.
And it's really weird to see that Gail's now a struggling writer, as she's writing fiction books and not doing so well, can't think of anything, while Sydney writes one book and she's the talk of the town.
Yeah, exactly. So now moving right along to rule number 9, it's whenever you see a video camera, and this happens 10 times in the movie.
Yeah, I feel like this is a necessary rule just to kind of slow down the pace a little bit. The video cameras generally belong to, obviously Gail has a ton of video cameras.
Yeah.
There's Robbie's video camera, which is always on his stupid face. And even, I think the Ghostface Killer has one even.
Yeah.
And rule number 10 is whenever somebody asks, what's your favorite scary movie, you take a sip. This happened in the film 7 times.
Yeah.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Okay, who is this?
What does she want?
I said, who is this?
I asked you a question. What's your favorite scary movie?
It's a rule because it's a line that's used, and it's obviously most memorable from the first Scream.
Yeah.
Or in this universe, the first Stab movie. But it's just quoted a lot in this film, which is why we made it a rule.
Yeah.
And that wraps up the rules for the drinking game for Scream 4. And the total number of sips we got this time around was again very high at 185. This is the equivalent of drinking 6 full drinks based on our 30 sip per can scale, and this is back to back extremely high drink counts.
Yeah. Obviously, I feel like slasher movies are gonna be high. There's a lot more predictability in them for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's worth starting at the very first scene of the movie, the opening sequence, I guess. It had a lot of deaths, a lot of masks, screams, movie characters. It was being meta by having the fake outs with the opening stab sequences, I guess. Like, there was just a lot, and it just got worse from there.
Yeah, and I guess there was also horror movies being referenced, such as, I think it was Saw 4, Saw 5.
Jigsaw they mentioned.
Yeah, and then Jigsaw. So there was a lot of it. There was a lot of fucking carnage within those first, 2-3 scenes, or if you want to consider it all one.
Yeah.
There was a lot of shit in there. So buckle up. That's what you were getting ready for the movie.
Yeah, and I do want to say about that opening scene, it almost felt like it was too meta. Because of how much fake outs it was having and everything, and but it was still trying to return back to the roots, I guess. So,
yeah, it was so much. It was them watching a movie and them watching a movie and them watching a movie. It was bad at that point.
Yeah.
That's as meta as it fucking gets, I guess.
Yeah,
Especially since the movie's representing itself.
Yeah.
And it's representing itself and itself and itself. It's a fucking mess.
Yeah.
So on to the movie itself. I feel like one of the strongest parts of the movie overall is the supporting cast was very well.
Oh yeah.
It was very well done. Kirby, Charlie, Rebecca, and Jill were all just astonishingly great to watch, especially for just such minor characters.
Yeah.
They really gave their all on their roles, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. And even Robbie wasn't bad, but Trevor didn't really have much. He was barely relevant throughout the movie.
Oh yeah, he was just kind of there, and he didn't really do much. He didn't say much. He was just there to be a suspect. That was pretty much it.
Yeah, exactly. So he kind of felt like he was forced into the script, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one character that maybe could have done without. But I do agree that a lot of the characters were done very well.
But yeah, it's really easy to say that I feel like a lot of the characters were very, very well fleshed out or flat, and very few of them fell flat. So even Emma Roberts, who played Jill in the movie, was from American Horror Story, so you can kind of get some background and kind of empathize and kind of see them in other roles and be like, oh, they're from this. And Rory Culkin, obviously Macaulay Culkin's brother, was from Signs. And then obviously there's Eric Knudsen, who played Robbie in the film, who was Daniel Matthews in Saw 2, which we have a review for that as well.
Yeah. And I guess just bringing up another point about characters involving like Gale and Dewey, how they always have a love-hate relationship. There's even more tension this time around because of Judy Hicks, who's in the movie.
Yeah.
She's almost like getting in the way of their relationship. It's almost like she's trying to sabotage their relationship. So it just added another layer of problems and tensions to Gale's and Dewey's relationship.
Yeah, especially since they have to be on such opposite sides of the spectrum. So, for example, Gale's a reporter, and obviously Dewey's the police, so Dewey doesn't want to leak anything to, like, reporters. And on top of that, like, Gale basically all she knows is, like, how to solve these, like, Woodsboro crimes involving Ghostface.
Yeah.
So, obviously, she's trying her best to solve these, and Dewey can't really give her any information, so it's very frustrating for Gale as well.
Yeah.
And even Dewey, I could say, it's a little bit frustrating for him as well, for her to kind of try to be intervening, even though it's literally Dewey's job.
Yeah. And in this movie, we see Sydney getting more famous for her book. A fame, I guess, she's more accepting of, as opposed to the fame of just being a victim. She kind of tries to get out of that label that she's just a victim, rather she's just telling a story now, and she still does it very humbly, and like she's not doing it for the fame or the fortune like we mentioned before.
Yeah.
And she even refuses the offer of making more books.
Yeah, she tries to do it in the way to say that she's strong and how other people can get through this. It's kind of like a self-help book in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
And she has shown a lot more in this film as opposed to only getting very limited screen time in the other one. This one, she has a family, so her aunt and cousin, I believe.
Yeah.
Even though they both get killed off, presumably, so that's kind of shitty. Story of her life, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess one more thing is she has a publicist, and you can kind of see, I guess, almost Gale vibes from her from the first Scream movie, I'd say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you definitely can, because she's trying to just, she's trying to get the scoop and not care about others, like, actual feelings and experiences and whatever. She's just trying to get a good story.
Yeah, she sees the murders happening in Woodsboro. It's like, oh, this is a good thing for our story, pretty much. And I guess on the topic of Sydney's cousin, Scout Taylor Compton did audition to play the role of Jill. This, of course, being the same actor that played Lloyd Strode in the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. I feel like it would have been an interesting casting choice for sure. I feel like she would have done a lot better in this role as opposed to Laurie for sure.
Yeah, maybe, because she didn't have such high expectations to live up to being Laurie Strode. Maybe she would have done better in this movie as, like, a new character that hasn't existed before. But who knows? It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I think Joe was still casted good. Like, she was still a good.
Yeah, she was still casted very well. Yeah. I feel like the only thing that could have done her like some favors from the Rob Zombie movie is just kind of showing how she's a little bit psycho. So I feel like that would definitely have helped her out a little bit. But other than that, like I'm still very happy with how she was cast regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess it's worth addressing. It's elephant in the room maybe even for some of you. Robbie and Charlie made a drinking game for the Stab franchise. So it doesn't even get more meta than that. We made 62 episodes for our show to become this meta, I guess.
Yeah, this was all planned, fabricated. The whole drinking game was fabricated. But yeah, I guess their drinking game is a Weenie Hut Jr. in comparison to ours. Like, they have rules that, I think they have like 3-4 rules, like can't get a cell phone signal, whenever a character shuts a door and it's like a fake jump scare, whenever somebody screams the word no. Ours is just whenever somebody fucking screams in general, or cries, or yells.
Yeah.
So ours, I'm pretty sure that rule alone would pretty much get more drinks than your entire fucking Stab movie. I guess the other thing is the twist in the movie. I feel like the twist this time around is pretty good. I feel like it was very unexpected as Charlie was tied up and then Kirby unties him and then immediately stabs Kirby. That was interesting to say the least. I didn't expect it at all.
Yeah, I agree. And then the reveal with Jill being the main person behind this whole the plot or whatever. I thought that was kind of an interesting concept, how she wanted her cousin dead because she's living in her shadows basically. And I did find that a little bit interesting. It felt a little bit forced, I'll say, but it was still overall a pretty good idea, I thought.
Yeah, I guess Jill's kind of the character who's like Gale, who kind of wants like the fame and fortune of everything, where Sydney's obviously Sydney. She just wants people to be kind of better and learn from her experience, as opposed to like, I want to be famous from this, which is exactly what Jill's intentions were. Speaking of Gale, I feel like it was very neat for her character specifically to find that Jill was the killer after all, even after Dewey like spoke to her and everything, because it's like, oh yeah, we can write books based off our matching scars. And then Gale was like, how does she know we have matching scars? And Dewey's like, shit, and runs off.
Why, she was stabbed in the shoulder? How did she know I was too?
So I feel like, obviously, like, Gale's handiwork comes in from her journalism. She kind of, like, knows what to pick up on, and, like, that instance specifically just really helped them out. So overall, what did you think about the movie?
Overall, I thought it was a good movie. Like I said in the last video, there is no bad Scream sequels, and this one I felt was even better than I expected because of Scream 3, I felt like was starting to decline, in my opinion, and I thought this one was just going to continue down into that spiral, I guess.
Yeah.
But with Kevin Williamson returning, I feel like he kind of helped bring it back up, maybe, with his writing, and, you know, they were more meta in this one than the last one, and to me, that is a big thing that makes Scream Scream, and obviously they had a lot more horror references than the last one as well, which I did like that fact of as also. So I think I did like this one a little bit more than the previous one, I guess.
Yeah, they definitely wrote in some much better characters this time around, which I feel like is one of the most appealing things about the movie for me. And now, let's move on to the award ceremony, where we award one not-so-lucky nominee, the Darwin Award. This award can be given to a character who made a stupid decision that resulted in them getting killed, somebody else getting killed, or simply resulting in something bad happening that could have been easily avoided. This award can also be given to a character that is just plain dumb. Here are the nominees.
Today's first nominee is Officer Perkins and Hoss for getting outmaneuvered by Ghostface and then murdered by him.
Robbie is the next nominee for thinking that gays live in horror movies. I've never heard of that rule, but let's see how that works out for you.
Wait, no! You can't, there's rules! I'm gay! I mean, if it helps.
Ooh, not too good.
And finally, we have Trevor for being suspicious, seemingly on purpose the entire film.
And the winner is the two officers. They trained for their entire life for this dangerous situation, and just to get outwitted by a teenager that is probably less than half as strong as them. That's gotta sting a bit.
With all that being said, we hope you enjoyed our look into Scream 4. If you end up playing the drinking game alongside the movie, or if you have any other feedback or suggestions, let us know in the comments below. Also let us know in the comments how these killers ranked to the others in the franchise.
Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss tomorrow's episode where we are going to be making a drinking game for Scream 5. If you want to check out our most recent video on Scream 3, click on the box on the top right, or if you want to see a playlist of all the drinking games and horror movies we review, click on the box below it. Thanks for tuning in, and this is us saying, cheers to fears.